Rev Don coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today, instead of addressing a question, I'm going to address a topic. And I hope you find it helpful. I don't know if you will. You may like what I have to say, you may not like what I have to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. And it's up to you to take it for what it's worth. And I want to address a behavior that I've seen over the years in the pagan community and elsewhere. And I basically want to say why I feel this is a very destructive behavior and encourage people to avoid it. And I'm going to start by repeating the most cliched phrase in the world. The children are the future. If there is not a future generation, there is no future. And if we belong to movements that we care about and we want to see them prosper, we must think about the future. And we must encourage that younger generation and do our best to help them to find the best ways to proceed on their path and understand that they aren't necessarily a carbon copy of us, nor is it necessarily good that they should be. Many years ago, 21 years ago I believe, when I started writing the first degree lessons that we currently use in the Correllian tradition, I started out on the wrong foot, and I was very fortunate to have Edward there to tell me this. And he pointed out to me that I was writing at my own education level, which is to say, that of a high priest of many years standing, and I was using many concepts that I was familiar with but was not explaining, many terms I was familiar with but was not explaining, which someone just coming to study first degree would probably not know, and that I needed to not do this. And he was, of course, absolutely right. And I therefore changed how I was writing and changed what I had already written to be more accessible to a person without the background that I already possessed. Because after all, one is not coming for teaching because they already know. And I tried to approach it from the point of view of a person who had no background whatsoever, and to explain it in the most accessible terms that I could, because after all, why else was I writing it? The reason I am addressing this subject today has to do with something I saw earlier in the day. On a Facebook list that I belong to, someone made a post about a new magazine. I believe it's a new magazine. It's called Wicca Magazine. And the poster just hated this magazine. I have not myself read the magazine, but it has nothing to do with what I'm going to say. And the poster basically trashed this magazine from one end to the other, including everything from the model on the cover to the comments section, and thought everything was horrible. But the problem is that the poster also gave no real reasons why it was horrible. It all kind of boiled down to, these are young people with less experience than myself, and I don't like how they're looking at things. This is not a good behavior. There certainly are times when it's appropriate to point out problems. There are certainly times when it's appropriate to try to tell someone there's a better way to do something, but that's not the same as trashing them. And I felt that this poster just trashed this magazine in a very disdainful way. They fell into the same trap that I fell into 21 years ago, of forgetting that although I have a certain background that informs my view, people who are new to the community do not. And you must give them time to build that background. In the meantime, you can try to gently lead them, you can try to encourage them, you can nurture them. There are a lot of good things you can do. But the one thing you should not do is put up a wall that will turn them away simply because you can't be bothered to realize that they're not the same as you are. They have to have time to build experience. And in fact, their views may never be in alignment with yours, and that isn't necessarily bad. We have room for difference. We have room for different ways of looking at things, different ways of doing things. It's a big world, and we're not that big a movement. I bring this up not only because of this one action, but because over the years I've seen a lot of people do it. They meet people with less experience with disdain. They don't stop to think about the fact that these people might not have been in the community as long, that they may not have had the same experiences, the benefit of the same education, etc. And they just do everything they can to get rid of them. And I think this is very damaging. It's damaging on a lot of levels. And it's damaging to the person who does it because it's born in the idea that you're so much better than they are, which is never a good way to look at yourself. When someone has to tear others down to build themselves up, it does not signal that they in fact are wise or superior or experienced or any of these things. It signals that they're insecure and that they are not in fact coming from a place of self-confidence or skill. Because when you have self-confidence and skill, you don't have to trash other people. You just show them better ways to do things. Now, why is this important enough for me to do a vlog on? Because as a movement, we really need to think about that next generation. If we don't have a next generation, why have we bothered? I feel that we're on this path to make a better world, and that it is important to keep it going. And in doing that, you have to be open to young people, to new people who may not be young, and you have to remember that all of them don't necessarily have that broad background that you may. And you have to, as my mother would have said, meet them where you find them. And this, I think, is just good advice, but it's also vitally important for our future. You cannot expect people to come to you fully formed. If they come to you fully formed, they don't need you to be a leader or a teacher or a temple head. They can do it themselves at that point. The people who are coming to you for teaching or for guidance are not fully formed, and you can't disdain them because they're not, because if they were, again, why would they need you? Instead, we really need to nurture our next generation. Again, whether they're younger or just new to the community, we need to nurture them, we need to try to show them the better ways of doing things, certainly, but tearing them down is not the way. Building walls they cannot get through is not the way, and it just leaves communities in ashes. And, you know, I have seen a lot of thriving communities destroy themselves through this sort of behavior and others. And I've seen other communities who have managed to avoid this and are thriving to this day, or in some cases have risen from their own ashes. I think that we need to remember that if we are priesthood, then we are in service of our faith. We're not just here to pat ourselves on the back. We're not here for emotional masturbation. We're here to actually do things that are good and build a future, not just that serve our ego in the moment. So, these are my thoughts. I hope you find them helpful. And until next time, may you blessed be. Please join me for our Correllian Peace Prayer. I pray for peace. I pray for love. I pray for stability. I pray for the nation where I live. I pray for the world.